Welcome, everyone, to the True Stories in Tech podcast, life changing conversations in the areas of technology, business, and belonging. My name is Brian Inuma. Our company is Strategic Systems Group. We are a Los Angeles based IT consulting firm and experts in enterprise resource planning. I'm here today with my friends and cohorts, Manish Bhatia, President and Think AI Consulting, Eddie Bader, President of Company Built, Eric Klaus, Partner at Partner Source Solutions. And our very special guest today is Idan Meir, co-founder and CEO of RightHear. Idan, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Terrific, and I'm glad you're able to join us. So why don't we start with something easy? And you can kind of start wherever you like, but maybe just tell us something about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So again, it's a pleasure being here, and I was waiting for this opportunity. My name is Idan. I'm 35 years old, married to Liat, and father to Abigail and Rani. I've recently actually relocated from Israel to the United States. I'm in Rockville, Maryland, and I've studied business and psychology at the university. And about 5 years ago, I co-founded Right Here together with a very good friend of mine. And I guess we're going to talk about right here a lot during this episode. But initially, or even before that, I would say about myself. Another fun fact: I'm always getting lost. Like the story of my life is wherever I go, I'm specific, especially for with unfamiliar environments. I'm getting lost. I'm this type of person that when you go to a new place, like in a hotel, for example. And you go out of the elevator, I'm turning right when it's need to turn left, or I'm going to the wrong direction. So uh, being disoriented in the environment and the space around me is very familiar to me, and it's part of the reason why we co-founded Right Here.
It's cool. So when I also noticed that in your LinkedIn profile, you spent some time in the Israeli Defense Forces.
Correct. Yeah. Well, in Israel, everyone has to go to the army for 3 years, so I've been there as well. Yeah.
Maybe tell us a little bit about that, because I have little bits of experience with military in Israel. What was it like?
Wow, it was probably the most challenging experience of my life. I got a lot of it. Got a lot of skills for life out of it. And you know what? It's funny you ask about this because it's part of the training. There are a lot of navigation. You have to go and it's solo in navigation. It's called just to maybe. Explain to the listeners, it's without a map. You need to learn the whole map by head, so that by heart. You don't have a map with you at all. There's no GPS device at all. You basically need to remember for 5 hours type of trip. That could be 10 kilometers or long navigation at night in the nature. Your route. And if you don't remember, or if you're not good in navigation, like me, you'll just find yourself getting lost in the wild, uh, frustrated and or very frustrated and tired. And in a way, it's funny you asked about the army experience. It gives you a lot of skills for life of improvising and building your confidence and things like that. But in a way, I believe that's part of my journey all the way to right here is this deep frustration of getting lost night over night in literally nowhere. Uh, so yeah,
Well,
that's a little bit about the army.
okay, well, very good. Well, thank you for that.
Mhm.
As far as your education is concerned, was it some portion in Israel and some portion here?
No, it was all in Israel. Actually, it was the Open University in Israel. And I was doing it while also working on different ventures and initiatives. Some of them were non-for-profit, and others were more business. Most of them, to be honest, failed, and I am proud of that. I think it's part of the journey, and I'm happy I've been able to fail fast to succeed faster, probably, or hopefully. So I've been learning a lot from these failures. Still learning for the failures we're having still today in our days. I think we're all facing that. Um, So yeah, I would say in the past 10 years, I'm in the startups, high tech world, always trying to embed with it some level of impact or do good activity.
Okay, so when you say do good activity, sometimes I think of it as a social good. And it sounds like you have sort of had that sort of feeling all the way through your career. I think maybe I have only kind of come across that as a value maybe recently. But I notice very clearly in folks that are maybe late 20s, early 30s, kind of in that millennial range, the notion of a social good is very important. So
Mm-hmm.
is that true? How did that become a passion for you?
I think one of the ways that it became a passion for me, when I had the point in my life when I need to decide what I want to study, right? Everyone had that. Okay, so what do you want to, what's your major or what do you want to study? And I was thinking, well, at the beginning I thought maybe going for education, and then I thought, well, I have like strong ideology behind it and values and all that, and like a social driven behind it. I wasn't sure I'll be able to, reach other interests and goals financially with my life. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll go for something kind of in the middle. This is why I choose like psychology, which is more eventually like more of like, I would say, the soft and hard side of it. And then business, which is more of, I would say, the rational, cold approach for I would say the common word for success in business, if you will. Kind of trying to mitigate this too. And I think when graduating, I had this wrong perception, which I believe that a lot of people still hold that. And I think this is maybe one of the changes happening now, happily with the millennials, is that, well, if this is a company that is doing very well financially, they're probably doing something wrong for the world. This is a wrong perception, and vice versa. If this company is doing something so noble, so beautiful, well, they're probably not going to be a unicorn. They're probably not going to be like IPO. They're just doing something nice. Well, very well. So such a great people, but hey, it's not a business. So it's like a wrong perception that it's either you're doing good or making a very profitable business. And this wrong perception, I believe in the core of my work, is to break that. I believe that, and right here, I think just one example at the beginning of its journey, but have the really an opportunity to have another example of breaking that misconception that you can, yes, become a very profitable, successfully as a business, and in the same breath becoming a company that's also making a huge impact on people's lives for better, as a social good. So do good while doing well, or do well by doing good, type of philosophy is what's kind of drives me behind it.
Cool. Okay, so I know Manish has a hard stop. So how about if we turn over to Manish? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Idan and Brian. Thank you. So welcome, Idan. So very interesting. You are talking about doing good and doing good financially on the business side also. Tell us a little bit on what does the Here I do
Right,
for,
do.
yeah.
Yeah. So about a little bit about RightHear. RightHear again is a startup company. We started at about 5 years ago, originally in Israel. And what we basically do is turning public spaces into more accessible environments for people with orientation challenges, including and most specifically people who are blind or visually impaired. Manish, we basically asked ourselves a very simple question when we started that, which was, what if signs could speak? We see signs everywhere. Wherever we go, we see signs indoors, outdoors, right? For the restrooms, for the elevators, for the reception, exit, whatever sign it is. What if these signs could finally speak, could talk? That could be super helpful, not just for people who are blind or visually impaired, obviously, but also for so many other audiences. That could be people with dyslexia. That could even be, that could be people with different cognitive abilities, and even, I always say, even language barriers, right? Just
Right.
imagine yourself in a foreign country, maybe in Israel, where lots of the signs are usually just in Hebrew. You're not
Yeah.
reading Hebrew. which would be my guess, you might feel a bit lost. So there's tons of advantages of making these signs speak, and this is what we've been working on in the past few years.
Okay, so understood. The anybody who needs help on the navigation or orientation, but how did you get the idea about this, and who are the most who are getting the most benefit out of this? Like, I mean, is this already in many places, or this is a startup?
Yeah, so maybe just to explain a bit of how it works, right? So it's basically it's an app. It's a free app, both Android and iPhone, that gives you audible descriptions of the environment around you. So it's basically answer very basic questions like where am I, what is here, what's around me. Wherever you point with your smartphone, it lets you know what's there and what's in what distance. So it's all about providing you with orientation, mostly orientation. In the outdoors, we also do some level of navigation, and we might talk about the differences between them later, but it's mostly about providing you with orientation. As I said, from my own very personal story, I got to this with, I would say in a way, with kind of luck, because at the beginning, we were working on a whole different concept. Gil and myself, Gil is my co-founder, is our talented CTO. And, after a year, we realized that the concept that we had wasn't fulfilling enough from a social perspective. It was with shopping and couponing in malls. And we're looking for something that will be more, I would say, social driven behind it. I told him, hey, if we could just let people know where they are in the mall, that could help a lot, because I'm getting lost whenever we're going to these different pilots we're having. And then we started, talk with users about it. We had some friends who are blind and visually impaired. In a matter of fact, one of them is a software engineer, is 100% blind from birth, Adi. I always love to talk about this incredible, inspiring person. And Adi is 100% blind from birth, but he's also a wonderful software engineer. When we asked him Adi at the beginning, what is the most challenging part of your work with us? We got him to join us as early as possible in the beginning on a part-time level of work capacity. And his answer was finding the office, finding the kitchen, finding the elevators. And it's like, this guy, not just using apps with his iPhone, and you might wonder how he can do that, obviously with screen readers software that are embedded with our iPhones and Android devices. If you'll go to the settings, you'll find this under accessibility. He's not just using his apps, he's actually developing apps. But still, when it comes to, finding the office or the kitchen or the elevators in the building, he needs to have somebody. Isn't it like absurd? Like, it's just, for me, like it's mind-blowing absurd. And by the way, together with Adi, we've researched the field, and here's two really incredible facts for you and the listeners. We researched the field, and we came to realize, specifically here in the United States, we have over 100 million Braille signs all across the country. Wherever you go, you'll find these Braille signs. Eric, I see you kind of nodding with your head. At the offices, next to restrooms, in the elevators, wherever you go. Doesn't matter if it's a small moms and pop shops, all the way to the biggest airports. They're everywhere. That's one fact. The other fact, and here you go, more than 90% of the blind community do not know to read Braille at all.
Right.
Wow.
Okay? Meaning that the 10% who does know to read Braille don't know where the signs are, by the way, to be able to read them, to touch them, right? Yeah. And if they're lucky enough to find the sign, they not necessarily want to touch it because of COVID-19. It's a public surface. Who want to touch that? And those who's brave enough, I would say, to touch it will get a very limited amount of information, which, by the way, a lot of times not even accurate because the manufacturer don't know what he wrote there. All in all, it's not effective, to say the least. And therefore, when you ask people like Adi and so many others from our community, so how do you go to the mall? How do you went to university? How do you go to the grocery? Always with somebody. That could be a mother, a father, a friend, always with somebody. And this is exactly what RightHear is changing. Is changing first the perception of it, of the ability of so many people, but also it's changing this the need of being reliable on other. In other words, allowing these millions of people being more independent. And again, not just people who are blind or visually impaired. We're talking about more audiences which we provide them their independence.
Yeah. No, excellent. Excellent. In fact, I remember, Eric, when we were in Inspire, I think DC, and there was a person highlighted on the stage, and he was blind, developing apps for Microsoft, and that was the first time I realized, the technology is helping so much, providing so much independence that people who could not see are developing app, and he was an inspiration. Later met him also, but that is true in day-to-day life. Even the people are losing the night vision sometimes, so that kind of thing. So this sounds exciting. Congratulations on the app. One more question. So now, this is a great concept, great social cause. In order to grow, you have to run it as a business. So what is the plan to get funding, get traction, make it market it? What is the plan on that side?
Yes. So first, I'm very proud. As I say, we're about 5 years on the road, and we've been fully bootstrapped all that time. I'm mentioning this because our way to grow, and we're currently about 10 people at the team, and we're operating in about 2,000 locations worldwide, is because we have a very, I would say, clear and solid business model. Where basically, while the app is 100% free to our users, both Android and iPhone in 26 different languages, it always, by the way, has been free. It always will be free. We don't think that our users need to pay for the world to be accessible. Not also, by the way, with their information. It's all 100% anonymous, so we don't have a sign-in process there. The ones who pay for it are just the ones that paying for the ramps or the elevators, in terms of, or the braille signs, as we talked about it earlier, which are businesses, enterprises. And enterprises, just like, for example, McDonald's, we're working with all of McDonald's restaurants in Israel, all of Pizza Hut in Israel, the Israeli parliament, biggest hospitals, and others. The reason for these companies to work with us is, one, it's because it's doing the right thing. Some, I would say some brands have a stronger conscience around it, and just understanding what we're doing here is enough for them to, yes, we're in. With others, there are other reasons. Sometimes it's regulation. There are a lot of regulation, ADA regulations around people with disabilities and accessibility in particular. While most of the discussions around that topic has been online in the recent years, it is coming more and more to the physical environment, the built environment. Because, as I said before, the numbers are just mind-blowing. So many braille signs, but so little can really use that. So another reason is for improve the compliance, I would say, with the ADA. The third reason is their brand image. I think no retailer or business in general can really afford not being accessible. Also from the brand perspective. Inclusion is a value that speaks out, I would say, nowadays, and companies who embrace that and adopt that, and thinking, by the way, about the maximum they can do with accessibility rather than the minimum they should do with accessibility, are just gaining so much better business. There's some reports around that, about how much money is available, around this audience. I'll see if I can pick it up if you like later here, but it's when you open up the doors for more people, you're maximizing the potential of your market, of your customers' market. More people can enter and enjoy your business. So,
yeah, that's awesome. So, in terms of we all are part of International Association of Microsoft Channel Partner, and I know we have grown our business with partnering. What in terms of business partnership, what kind of referral partners or partners are good for you? Just so that if we come across, we can refer them your way or make them influenced by the way you are approaching the solution.
Absolutely, that's a wonderful question, and thank you for asking this, Manish. As I said at the beginning, our inception was a very simple question: what if science could speak? Right. And today we're taking this question a bit further and asking, what if these IoTs that are around us would be able to speak? So whether if it's access control companies, right? There are a lot of technologies there. If these devices or these technologies will be able to communicate, if you will, with our app, we're already providing a huge value to our users. That could be other, IoT, if you will, devices or technologies that are in building. Think about an elevator, right? If we could speak with the elevators as well, allowing our users to know on what floor they are getting out of the elevator personally in their own language. And there are other type of technologies. In terms of facilities to implement that, I believe, it is relevant for every space. The way we see it is every space that is open for the public. If they have a ramp for a person in a wheelchair, it is about time to have an audible ramp, if you will, for a person with visual impairment. So if you welcome people, here's something to look at. We are mostly focusing nowadays on actually small layouts, simple layouts, like with restaurants, for example, which makes it very simple and affordable, I must say. One of the reasons, or one of the way we've designed the business model, that it will be very affordable, almost a no-brainer, I would say. Our goal is that it will be a no-brainer for businesses to have it, so it could really be ubiquitous. Only when it will be ubiquitous, we could really fulfill our vision of allowing people to be independent.
Yeah, no, that is excellent. By the way you are describing how you came to the idea of the business, like if science could speak, is a great tagline. I don't see that on your website, but
not yet, but Nicole joined us recently as our very first marketing director. We've been around, as I said, about 5 years. We never had any person, and our website is probably an example, but we never had any person in the team that had any marketing role. All of our marketing has been done through our clients, our customers, which I kind of like with this business. Every new place that onboard onto the system, usually promote it so others will join as well. Now that we have Nicole, happily, a bit from our messaging, positioning, and text is going to be improved.
That's great. So thank you for all the input on your business and all the best wishes.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you so much.
Hey, Don, I'm just going to jump right in here because I have probably 1,000 questions. So what you're doing is really, I guess I'll say for me, really both intriguing and it strikes a chord with me because, and I'll give you a little bit about my background. So my mother was a Braille transcriptionist for about 30 years for 2 school districts here in the U.S. So I grew up in the, I guess I'll say, in the blind community.
Right.
And then, ironically, as life would have it, my mother is now 84 years old, and she has lost much of her vision. In fact, it's virtually all gone at this point. Wow. And so accessibility is an incredibly important thing that I deal with all the time with her, taking her, as you were talking about, right, taking her shopping, her being able to get around a supermarket or a hardware store, anything along those lines. She needs somebody to take her today. She can't do that herself. So I'm incredibly intrigued by what you're doing here, and I also agree with you on the if you think about a supermarket, if you think about a large hardware store like a Lowe's or a Home Depot or somebody like that, they could only benefit by making their stores more accessible. And somebody needs to be out there, leading that charge and helping them to realize where their stores aren't accessible. And to your point, right, having the wheelchair on-ramp is great for a certain type of disability, but it completely ignores the need of the other types of disabilities that you might serve.
Exactly. And just to comment on 2 points you've mentioned here. One is with the you talked about your mother and going to a grocery, not just about the effective way of going and buy whatever you need in the grocery. It's also about the self-esteem around it, right? That
Sure.
now you cannot do it yourself, or it's psychologically it's a very meaningful, important part of who you are. And I think I'm feeling very fortunate that we allow people to have that. One of our users, Tali, if she's listening, she called it gives you a sense of freedom, which, I really love that term. Like, it's a sense of freedom. I usually ask people, like, when was the very first time you felt independent? Right? As a kid, you got the key to the home, or you got a first time on the bus, or whatever, right? Well, that's feel like being independent feels like freedom, and this is just about that point. The other point you mentioned, about Lowe's and other type of stores, even when you think about the icon of accessibility, it's a person on wheelchair.
Right.
Now, that's the way we would tend to think about accessibility or people with disability, is a person on wheelchair. Well, hey, there are so many other disabilities out there. Many of them are invisible, totally invisible. You might won't even notice that that person has some level of disability. It can be sensory. For me, talking about the blind in particular, right? It's a very severe, I would say, disability. It's not just, it's but still, it's not even recognized with the icon in a way. Right. So by the way, that language is a bit changing today, and I think what's RightHear is working on is changing this perception, or changing the way we think about accessibility. It's not just a ramp, and not just the minimum you have to do because of ADA. It's the maximum you could do to benefit the best for your business. And you know what? It's gonna also remind me. Sorry for kind of flowing into my thoughts here, but it reminds me. A lot of people also don't know that, but many of the technology that we are all using today originally started as assistive technology. And I'll give you as an example, even SMS, right? The text SMS. Who needs that? You have a phone. Like, who needs to text? Why would I need to text you if I can? Well, for the deaf, that could come handy. But who's using texting today? Everyone. Also, the vibration with your phone, right? So if I call you, Brian, right now, and if you cannot hear, but if it's vibrate, that's good. Okay, I can see that someone is calling me, or if it's an SMS, right? I see who's using vibration today. Everyone. And there are so many other, I would say, examples around it. Audible, by the way, are you listening to Audible?
Of course.
If I'm not wrong, Audible, the beginning was, again, reading books for
the blind.
For the blind.
Right.
Who's using Audible today? Everyone. So there's tons of examples, and I personally believe that also with what we're doing here, by allowing these signs to talk, we're eventually providing better orientation for everybody, not just for the blind, visually impaired, but for everybody who want to get better orientation in an unfamiliar environment.
Yeah, absolutely. No, like I said, I'm just really, really impressed with what you're doing there. I absolutely see the need for it. I'm curious, you've talked a little bit about it, but maybe talk a little bit more. I'm curious about your monetization model for this. How does that work? So, I looked at the website, and of course I can go and I can sign up for free.
Right.
So somewhere in there, though, obviously you have to monetize this. So where does that come in? And I saw a blog article on the website that talks about this. So I'm curious to understand a little bit more. There are, I guess, other services out there where you pay for this type of service, if you will. But that, of course, for somebody like, again, my mother on a fixed income, that could then become off-putting. She might decide I don't want to spend, some dollars per month for this. So what is the monetization model for the business?
So we, again, it's 100% free to our users, and we charge facilities. We charge the businesses. We charge them today with two fees. It's about to be one soon. Today with a setup fee of installing the system, mapping the facility, training, and all that. And the second fee is the subscription. As I said, it's about to become only the subscription very soon. It's an annual subscription. Most of our contracts today are for 3 years or more. In terms of what are the pricing, it's very depends on the scope of the project. It's one thing to turn a McDonald's restaurant accessible. It's a whole different thing to turn a Home Depot accessible with that system. So it is depends on that type of parameters. But as I said earlier, first, we believe that to be able to really achieve our vision, our social vision, if you will, it has to be ubiquitous, right? Because we can really allow your mother, for instance, or any other person to be independent if he'll know that he can go with it wherever he like, not just to specific luxurious places, right? So this is one. Secondly, from a business perspective, it's a volume game. We designed the business early on that it's going to be a volume game. The more locations that will work with us, the bigger the business will do. If we're only going to have, 100, well, we already passed the 2,000, but if we're going to stay with that forever, well, the business will fail. We believe that we can double up that rapidly, fairly rapidly. As I also mentioned, there are different reasons for businesses to work with us. As I said, from their image through doing the right thing, along the way through a regulation that has been stricter and stricter around that topic. And I think the more the awareness will rise up, also among our users, because at least in Israel, they're our best salespeople, if you will. Because once they enjoy that in a certain place, now they start asking for this from other places. And this is where we get to these calls and work with it. And I would say we've almost never had a scenario where the cost has been the barrier. If this facility wants to be accessible, and we see the value in it socially and financially, we'll come up with a way to make it happen. I always say that where there is a will, there is a way. And since we're in the way-finding system, we know that there is a way. So that's never a barrier. That's the way we monetize that, charging the facilities an annual subscription fee.
What is I'm curious, how do you go about selling it to the facility? What approach do you take for them? Is it based on, increased sales? Is it the PR value? Is it a little bit of everything? How does that work?
It's a little bit of everything, but we usually, it's about doing the right thing. This is about doing the right thing. Now we are approaching, I would say, when we approach a business, many of them are coming to us, I must say, which is really great. Again, as the more the awareness is rise up around it, the more our community of users is growing, the more inbound leads we're getting. But for those that we're approaching is usually because we see there could be a huge impact of them having it. Like Microsoft, for example, we've turned 2 of their facilities so far. We're now adding more. We've came to realize if Microsoft's going to put it in all of their facilities, yes, that's definitely going to make a huge impact for other high-tech companies or, in the workplace in general. There's a huge, you probably know, there's a huge challenge for employment within the disability community. If companies will be more accessible, it's hopefully promote inclusion within the employment. So this is why we approach them. In other cases, we have other reasons to approach businesses that we think RightHear could first benefit them in terms of their ROI metrics and image reasons and even regulatory reasons. But it is a bit of everything that I think eventually convince the business to have it.
Perfect. I was going to ask you about the relationship with Microsoft, because one of those other blog articles that I saw was about accessibility of one of Microsoft's campuses. And I was wondering what the relationship between RightHear is and Microsoft. So thank you for that. Is there more to that relationship than that?
I mean, it started at an accelerator. Microsoft had an accelerator called AI for Good, which we applied and then being part of their batch. At the end of this accelerator, we had the opportunity of presenting it to a higher level of Microsoft. Eventually, they decided to take it for 2 of their facilities as a customer. So I'm happy to call them a customer, adding more and more. So we're working close with them. I would say we're working close with them from the technology side of things, with Azure and their technologies, to the, I would say, distribution side of things within their company and outside.
That's fantastic and super exciting. That was the other thing I wondered about was, was there a technology element to this as well? Were you leveraging the Microsoft technology around Azure and some of those pieces? So that's fantastic. Manish touched on this a moment ago, but maybe I want to dig in a little bit more deeply. What is it that you look for? What would be the ideal customer for you? Is it those retail? Is it the shopping mall, or is it the retail companies, or yes, everybody?
Well, we'll welcome everybody, but the main focus or the main target we're currently looking at as companies that have multiple locations, as many locations as possible. The reasons for that is that we want to be able to serve our community in LA, but also here in DC or in New York or wherever. So this, national or multinational company that have a lot of locations all across the country, whether if it's specifically we're focusing on QSR, quick service restaurants like the McDonald's or Pizza Hut or others. It's relatively simple and fast to turn these type of facilities accessible. And also, one of the reasons we're focusing on that, aside of that, is that, when you think about, what RightHear is doing, like audible wayfinding or, orientation in general, the first thing come to mind is, oh, airports, these places are difficult. Oh, hospitals, this is super difficult. Right. True. It's true for you as a sighted person. It's also true for a blind person. But we're looking into this blue ocean, if you will, of the simple layouts of small stores, which is really accessible fairly quickly, fairly easily, and very affordably. By doing that, we kind of, I think, in a very blue ocean. Usually when we talk to this type of customer, they're like, this is the very first time we even think about it. Like, we never thought about that there is maybe even a challenge here, but there is definitely a challenge there. So it's put us, I think, in a very unique position. You can find, by the way, this is a note, part of the discussions around accessibility and technology in the recent years was around the kiosks. Whatever restaurant you're going to, there is a kiosk where you can order it, you're self-order.
Right.
So those haven't been accessible enough. And there's a lot of discussions around how accessible they should be. We're saying, hey, you first need to find that kiosk, right?
Right.
It is important to turn that kiosk accessible, and it's a very important cause. But you first need to find that kiosk or restaurant in general, and then also being able to find the counter or pickup or restrooms or whatever it is. This is where we come in.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking, a Starbucks, for example, right? How do I order my Starbucks? How do I walk into a Starbucks just to, as you said, just to negotiate, to be able to place my order? Where do I go to pick up my coffee when I'm ready for it?
Exactly. And the menu. And
right.
the menu,
Absolutely.
and the menu, right? The menu, it's some of them, specifically with Starbucks, by the way, some of them have it in Braille, which is wonderful. It's a great start. But again, if you really think about accessibility, that's just not enough, because 90% of the blind community do not read Braille. Right here, you can have a link to the digital format of the menu, so our users can really hear the menu and skip to whatever it likes, again, in their own language, which makes it even more accessible. When you think about accessibility, it's for everyone, including everyone. So making it for multiple languages, it's like that easy when it's digital. And it's also effective if you're in a physical space, if you have that link, if you will, or contextual link where you're there. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no, I can think of, and then you touched on it as well, the element of the foreign traveler, right? I mean, there's another value to this. Even if I am a sighted person, if I am as you pointed out, the foreign traveler, I'm in Israel. I've never had the opportunity, although I've worked for 2 Israeli companies in the past. But yeah, and that's, obviously, you can have that experience virtually anywhere in the world.
Right.
So, it becomes a unique challenge for a lot of people at that point.
Right, absolutely. And Eric, you were mentioning groceries earlier with your mother. We're working in the past 3 years. We've been working with the biggest grocery chain in Israel, and one of the things we learned with them, and also with a few pilots that we currently have with grocery stores, major ones here in the United States, is that there is another, I would say, hidden ROI from what we're doing. And you were asking about this as well. So just. For many of the grocery stores, they have this policy that if a blind person is coming as a shopper, someone from the staff needs to stop whatever they're doing and then guiding, escorting around the store so he could do his shopping there. We crunch the numbers, and as it's about an average, it's about 50 people coming to each store per week. So that's about 50 hours being spent every week per store on escorting a blind or visually impaired person. So that's obviously had a direct cost as the wage of that person, but it also had a huge indirect cost, the alternative cost, because that person was supposed to be somewhere else in the store. He was supposed to be the cashier, etc. Now talking about the audiences you just missed, that just not coming to your store if you don't allow it there. So. When you look into different cases like this with groceries or with hotels, it's a different business case for different sectors. You can find different ways of, by allowing that accessibility in my business, in my store, I'm actually saving money or expanding my market or both. So it's fascinating to see that happening.
So. Yeah, you mentioned, sort of starting on the smaller side of things. So I'm guessing that maybe, the Lowe's and the Home Depot might not be where you're necessarily focused right now. Although I'm sure, that would be a great place to get to at some point.
Yeah.
But, are there particular, targets, specific, like, is there a top 5 companies you would like to be able to get into? And the reason I ask is because, with our listeners out there, they may know, I may, one of them may have an inroad at a Starbucks, as we were talking about a moment ago, or somebody like that. Is there a fantasy dream list of, gosh, here, if I could get a minute with, a vice president, somebody who's responsible for accessibility in these 5, companies, wow, that would be amazing.
Yeah, wow. Great question. I'm just trying to think who can I put in that 5 because there's so many of them.
You can do more than 5, but if you've got 5 to start with, that's great.
I mean, I will, if I could put it this way, right? If any one of the listeners here is intrigued about what we're doing and want to help us making more places accessible, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what facility or what brand it is, as long as it's open to the public and people can go there. Would love to speak with them and offering them what we're having. We're focusing on restaurants right now. So yeah, you mentioned Starbucks. That could be amazing, or but not necessarily the biggest one. That we're early into the American market. As I said, just relocated here about half a year ago. We're already getting some traction with companies here, but that could also be a local chain with just 30 restaurants, right? Or even lower than that. It's all about creating and gaining the momentum. So ideally, yeah, the Starbucks of the world and the McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, Panera's, whatever. But would really love to work with anyone that cares. That's what it is.
Fantastic. No, I like I said, I can see so many possibilities for what you're doing. And I would certainly encourage any of our listeners out there, if you have contacts, connections, in your Rolodex, in your database, clients that you're working with today that, meet the description that Idan is looking for here, please reach out to him and let's see if we can help them out here, because I think it helps all of us at the same time, right? Like I said, it's my mother. It doesn't necessarily, it's not about me, but if it helps my mother and she is more independent, that's so much the better. And I know all of us have mothers, all of us have fathers, brothers, sisters out there. If anybody, can use that kind of help, I know everybody appreciates it.
Yeah,
So.
and it's also great for business. Really, it's really when I say every business that care, also businesses that care about their own business, even regardless, I mean, of the social layer of it, because really, even if to be cynical for a second, even take it from the image perspective for a second. I mentioned McDonald's in Israel. McDonald's in Israel put it in all of their restaurants. They made a wonderful video right after we installed the last store that got a 1.5 million views within 2 weeks in Israel. That's a ton of views in Israel. I remind all, it's a 8 million people country. So even from a marketing perspective, it can guarantee you a very positive light immediately, and then you'll start to see the values of it longer and like down the road for the longer term of having more shoppers and getting great feedback from them.
Yeah. Well, it's really, really amazing what you're doing. I'm super, super excited. Definitely want to stay in touch with you. I've got some thoughts of my own and some connections that I want to try and tap into for you. So definitely let's follow up here, and when we wrap up the podcast, I'll give you my contact information so we can kind of continue the conversation. Brian, you want to take it from here?
I was going to have you do one more bit of inquiry about Nicole Affleck. So first, how did we come in contact with Nicole Affleck, and then that would kind of lead into Idan's contact. So go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's great. That's interesting. Well, certainly, you talked about the Microsoft connection. I'm curious if that's how you got connected to Nicole.
So Nicole, which I also mentioned earlier, she's ex-Microsoft. She's been there in the past 5 years, and she actually relocated to Israel a few months ago. And she found us. I think she found us through the Microsoft program, but I'm not 100% sure. She reached out to us. She was looking to do something in the assistive technology world and impact and everything in the bridge, I would say, between impact and technology. So she reached out to us. To be honest, I wanted to kind of learn more about this person who's interested to join us. So I went, LinkedIn, and then I was Googled the name, and then I found her on your podcast. So I was like, I want to listen to that person before I even speak with her. And I was like, in the very first minutes of hearing her, I would say, okay, I have to speak with her. As I said, Nicole is the very first marketing director. I was sure for years, in the past few years, that when we will get to the point where we're going to hire someone like this, that's going to be a very long filtering process, with tons of it. And to be honest, she had us in the low. She was just heading us in the low. Okay, no need to go through this whole process. You're in. And I'm very, very happy and privileged that she's with us. Nicole, if you're listening, thank you so much and welcome to the team.
I think there might be a couple of other questions here. Let's see. Did we miss anything? I'm trying to think. Okay, this is a good one that we didn't talk about today, but let's talk about the difference between navigation and orientation.
Yeah. So navigation. So a lot of people tend to think that what is the big difference, right? If there's a difference at all? So there is. It is a slightly different, but it means a lot. The difference is, while navigation is going from one point to another, point A to point B, as turn by turn, just like we're using Waze or any other navigations apps. Go there, go here, go. This is the one type of experience. Orientation is a bit different. Orientation is knowing where I am, what is there, what's around me, maybe what's the relation of me with the space around me. It's not better, by the way, or worse. It's just two different things. And there are advantages, by the way, in each of every one of them. With specifically with navigation, for example, I think the main advantage is that you'll get to your destination easily, right? You want to get to a certain place, it takes you there. Fantastic. By the way, a lot of times, one of the disadvantages, you kind of miss what has been along the way. You got to their destination, but you have no idea where you've been passing through. Like, have you seen that monument? No, I was focusing on where to go. All right, so you just missed that. With orientation, it's actually being mindful or being focused on where are you, what's around you. It might not necessarily take you to a certain place, but it can help you get there a little bit, right? So you can, based on knowing where you are and the signs again around you, you can have a sense of where it is that you want to go to. So again, it's not better or worse, it's just two different things. RightHear specifically is focusing on the orientation side of things, giving our users the ability to navigate by cognitively navigating there, but we're giving them the ability to know where they are and what's there. More of explorer type of experience rather than a navigator type of experience. Yeah, so that's a little bit about this definition.
Perfect. If a business is looking to make their business, more accessible, are there things that they should be thinking about, that they should be considering?
Oh yeah, great question. One which I always encourage is involving people with disabilities in the process. Right? I love this phrase, "Nothing about us without us," and unfortunately, a lot of the times it's just overlooked or missed. If you're looking to have some level or some type of assistive technology or accessibility feature in your website or in your business in general, in the facility, do your best to involve the professionals and specifically people who have disabilities, or people, the target market for this, if you will, and specifically in our case, people who are blind or visually impaired in particular. So this is one. Secondly, try to aim for the maximum and not the minimum. Now, obviously, in terms of cost, yeah, aim for the minimum. In terms of cost, that's business, I'm sure. But in terms of what do you want to get out of it, try not to be focusing on the minimum, so it's going to comply with the law or anything like that. So yeah, I'll tick the box. Try to think about how can I maximize it the best possible. And to be honest, in today's world, you can even capitalize on that a little bit because it's not common yet. It will be. I always said, the awareness around website accessibility is pretty high. Like, I'm pretty sure that most of our listeners kind of heard about that website has to be accessible, right? Because, by the way, it wasn't like that just 4 years ago. Today, it's like, sure, obvious, of course, but just 4 years ago, a lot of people didn't know that the website can be or should be or have to be accessible. I believe, personally, that in 4 years from now, the fact that your physical store has to be accessible also audibly for people will become obvious. So today, right, no business goes and say, we're amazing, we have an accessible website, because it's like, yeah, duh, of course, like, what are you so proud of? It's kind of obvious. It's like what we're expecting from you as a business. But if today a business will say, hey, guess what, our store is accessible with an audible wayfinding, oh wow, this is amazing. That's an opportunity we have for this year, next year, maybe in the other year. In 4 years from now, that will become obvious. That won't be. So try, as a business, my recommendation, try to look for the maximum you can, so you can a little bit of even capitalize on that, because that won't be a privilege anymore in a few years. And you'll be doing that anyway in a few years. So try to benefit the most you can out of it.
Are there mistakes that you've seen organizations make around this? I'm curious. What does bad accessibility look like?
Well, I think, it's hard for me saying bad, because at the end of the day, if you're doing something, right,
It's better
so
than nothing, right? Sure.
Yeah. So I was just posting about that. Lyft has this. I just found it here in DC. Lyft, the e-scooters, right? They have scooters, right? So they have a braille sign on it on the scooters, and I was like, in this area, and I was like, what is this? I have to learn about. Like, I go to all online, and then I saw that if this scooter was as a hazard, right, that caused it to fall because it wasn't parked properly, you know who to reach out to. So that's great that they've done that, because they're thinking about maybe a blind person in my head and then want to. Beautiful. But again, 90% of the blind community cannot really read that. And therefore, what I'm saying, it's not bad. It's a good start. There's no really bad here. But you could do better, or the warm recommendation is, again, involving people with the process, making sure that the principles behind it are the ones that you can really align with. So I also mentioned that our app is 100% free, and it's because we believe it's a principle. We don't think that our users needs to pay for the world to be accessible. Have you ever met, by the way, have you, any of you or the listeners, if any of the listeners ever met that person, tell me if you ever met a person that is on a wheelchair that is paying for a ramp? No. I don't think it's even legal. So just like it has to be free for a person in a wheelchair, it has to be free for any other person, also if he's a blind or visually impaired. So making sure that this solution is 100% free to your customers and users, it's a principle to look at. Being it accessible at as many platforms as possible is also part of accessibility. If it's only available on iPhone, well, you're kind of missing, again, from an accessibility perspective, a lot of people. Languages. So again, consult with an expert in accessibility field, and involve as much as you can a person with disability with it. I think that could help a lot.
You just touched on a couple of other great points there. Obviously, platform, right? Being platform agnostic. So you need to be able to support, it's great to have it on iPhone, but then you leave out, all of the Android users. That's not ideal either. You talked about languages. I'm curious, what have you run into around that, or what has been the experience so far? I mean, obviously being in the US, I'm assuming English. In Israel, I'm sure Hebrew. But what other, as you're expanding, are you running into other languages, and what are you seeing from that side?
So as for today, we're supporting any language, or the most common languages that has text-to-speech engine, because we work on the text-to-speech. It's all text turned to be speech. I would say maybe a point here, and that's actually I met it was 2 or 3 years ago in a conference, a person who was blind and deaf.
Oh, wow.
And I was asking the team, hey, do we have anything there? Like, what do we? And Gil told me, well, the cool thing is that a lot of them are using Braille screens. It's a device that has Braille. All the pins goes up and down.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you familiar with that, by any chance?
I am, yeah.
You are. So that person had that, and he said, well, if that supports Android, you can ask him to download the app. He did, and it got all the text in Braille. So that was really unbelievable to see a deaf blind person getting the information from our system in Braille. And I'm mentioning this because you were asking about different areas where I'm really proud of the team and Gil. They're really, we might be missing, and if we are, we'll love to learn about it and improve it. But they are really look for all different corners where we're not missing anyone. So yeah.
Well, thank you. I think we're running on time here, so I'm gonna turn it back over to Brian to close us up and wrap us up. But this has been a really great conversation, Idan. I really, really appreciate it, and we'll definitely stay in touch here.
Thank you, Eric. I enjoyed it.
Okay, Idan. I said something in our earlier conversation about being inspired, and I for one, and I think Eric would agree, we are inspired.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
To give Nicole credit, she did ask us to include a couple of things, so let me see if I can pick up one of them. She said something like, RightHear is more of a utilities company and less of an IT company. What did she mean?
I think just because you were asking something about IT, so I think that's why she was mentioning this. I'm not sure, but I think that's what it is.
Okay, very good. So not necessarily a technology type of organization, but maybe at some point it could become a part of a public utility. Okay, understand. Good. Okay. And then also to give her credit, I think you said something about having a fun word or a translation.
Oh, yes. That's actually a good one, I hope. So the word accessibility in Hebrew is nagish. Okay, nagish. And similarly to that, in Hebrew, there is another word which sounds gisha. Nagish, gisha. And the other word is gisha means attitude. And it's the same root of the word. It's the same root, nagish and gisha. And I really found it interesting because I believe, we're talking a lot about technology here. And I believe that, and we're living in a world where technology is accessible. Technology is accessible. There's text-to-speech engines. There's, speech-to-text engines. They're like, technology is accessible, but we as human aren't accessible enough. And this is the root of that is the attitude. If we'll change our attitude, the technology is already in place. So if I believe the biggest challenge as for today was accessibility is the attitude rather than the technology. And I find it fascinating that these two words, negishut and gisha, or nagish and gisha in Hebrew, are really have a similar root in language. And I hope you and listeners will find it mystical or mysterious as well.
I sort of have this sense in my old age that things happen for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of feels like that. The attitude and the accessibility are tied together.
Yeah. So I actually I'm happy to with this message let our users think about the attitude. Technology is accessible.
Cool, very good. I have maybe a sort of philosophical question. So you use the term bootstrap.
Right.
And maybe just for folks who aren't familiar with the term, what is your definition of bootstrap?
Yeah. It means that we up until very recently, a few months ago, we weren't going for outside investors or outside capital, no grants, no investments. We've been basically growing organically. The more customers joined, the more we've been able to grow. Or if you will, our investors were our customers, just as in every regular, I would say, business, but in a startup field. So we've been able to grow with that, I would say, fairly rapidly. I'm very proud of that, just because, and we're all reading the news and seeing the different valuations of startup companies and high-tech companies in general. It's not just promise or a wonderful story we pitch to someone who's decided, oh yeah, I'll put $1 million or $10 million in it. It's a solid business with a solid business model that works. As I said, in over 250 paying customers worldwide, over 2,000 locations worldwide with the biggest brands we have. So I'm very proud of that, and I'm very excited about the opportunities ahead of us. Now that more investors are joining, and if there are investors listening to us, that should be a hurry because we're closing around very soon.
Very good. Okay, so I guess I was going to kind of ask a question, although you may have already jumped past my question. Under what conditions would you accept an investor?
Well, we're looking for investors that have alignment with our vision. We're looking for now investors here in the U.S. Part of our investors at the moment are in Israel, which is great. But we're looking for more connections here. We're looking for investors that understand that it's not either or social or unicorn. That's going to be an impact unicorn, and and if there are angel investors or early stage VCs here, would love to speak with you.
Very cool. All right then, why don't we wrap up? And first of all, thank you so much. This was inspiring.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure, Brian. You and Eric and Manish earlier really gave me a feeling of home here. So it was really, really a pleasure speaking with you today.
Terrific. Okay, if listeners are interested in learning more about what you're doing, how would they contact you?
The easiest way would be on LinkedIn. Just look for Idan Meir, IDAN MEIR. And if not on LinkedIn, I'm also happy over email. It's just Idan, IDAN, at Right, RIGHT, -hear, like hearing, HEAR.com.
Terrific.
I'm all about networking right now, so new into the US. So if you're listening to this and have some thoughts, feedback, ideas, please reach out.
Terrific. Okay, thank you, Idan, for your time today.
Thank you, Brian.
And thank you for sharing your stories with us. Fascinating.
All right.
That will do it for this episode of the True Stories in Tech podcast. I'm Brian Inuma with Strategic Systems Group, along with Manish Bardia, President of Think AI Consulting, Eddie Bader, President of Company Built, Eric Klaus of Partner Source Solutions. Thank you for listening. Please join us next time for more True Stories in Tech.